Good morning and welcome back to the League Winners Fantasy Show. I'm your host, as always, Dalton Salings, and today we are diving into the positional breakdowns, which means we will be looking at each position in fantasy and my top 12 players at that position. Normal league is going to be a 12-team league, so we're looking at any player that would be considered a 1 in that league. So I'm very excited today to get into it. A reminder, this is based on my projections and my rankings. If you want to see a more in-depth breakdown on a player I didn't talk about, you can head back to the divisional breakdowns, which will have all that information there. And yeah, with this though, one more piece of note: if it's your first time here, first year here checking out these videos, the way I do my rankings is I'm not factoring in an injury unless it's a preseason injury, saying they're entering the season with. I might project a player more cautiously if I think it's likely they're going to get injured, but I also, some of these players are projected closer to their ceilings, others closer to their floors. Just because I have a player at the second best player at that position doesn't mean I'm going to draft them there, because there could be other risks associated with that player. And I'll get into that when I'm talking about people. But just a reminder, you don't need to draft exclusively by the rankings. There's other factors at play that the numbers don't always factor in. So that'll be something I'm explaining as we're going along, but just wanted to drop that in at the beginning as a little reminder before we get started. Now, a lot of times people count down their rankings from 12 to 1. I like to actually do the opposite. I like to go from 1 to 12 because to me, I think it's typically pretty clear who the last person's going to be, or you can figure it out as you go. Kind of like the suspense of, oh, who's going to be in those last few spots. So for that reason, I'm going to start at number 1 and work my way up to number 12. Like I said, if you want more in depth on any of these players, there are also the divisional breakdowns, but I am going to get us started with my quarterback 1 for this year, and that's Josh Allen. I mentioned it in the AFC East video. I think he's the best fantasy player in terms of just total point production. Now, of course, you're not drafting him 101 in a one quarterback league, but he is the highest projected quarterback by me by almost 2 full points per game, which is a big enough gap to make me consider drafting him in the third round. Really, third round. I wouldn't take him in the second round, but in the third to fourth rounds of drafts, I am considering Josh Allen. It is, I think, worth it with the point gap I have projected between him and the second quarterback. I think he could be that difference maker and pay off his draft price. It's really hard to, as the first quarterback off the board, pay off your draft price because you are drafting them at their ceiling, right? They can't do any better than QB1. But I think there's a good chance if he stays healthy, he's the quarterback 1 this year. I don't see anyone else getting particularly close to him. I think there's a good offense that's going to score points. The addition of DJ Moore is going to help in the passing game, and the rushing upside is the exact same we've known it to be. So I am kind of all in on Josh Allen as my quarterback 1 this year. I won't be drafting him every time. I think there's a ways to make up that gap through other positions and things like that. But I'm not anti-drafting the first quarterback off the board this year because I do believe that he is the best quarterback and will finish head and shoulders above the field this year, making him a worthwhile investment early on in drafts. My quarterback 2 is really the first one where I go off ADP here. So I have the sleeper ADPs right now, which is based on a redraft league. So it's a little bit different than some of the draft positions I've been talking about based on best ball and underdog. But for this video, in the upcoming positional breakdown videos, I wanted to look at the redraft ADP where it stands now. So this quarterback is going off the board right now at quarterback 10. I have him projected as the quarterback 2. It's a big jump. And like I said, this is the type of player where I'm going to mention it again of that doesn't mean I'm drafting him as the second quarterback off the board or even that I'm drafting him in every draft. It's not like, oh, I got to leave with this guy. I'm 8 spots ahead of ADP. I do like getting him, don't get me wrong. And the quarterback's going to be Dak Prescott. I talked about with Aiden on the insane passing yards numbers I have for him and the passing touchdowns, but I'm not leaving every draft with Dak Prescott because there is the injury risk. We've seen it with Prescott where he has a big year and then goes down with an injury, and that seems to be the back and forth seesaw of it all. And so there is that injury risk. If you can draft him at the quarterback 10, I think that's a fair price, like a very fair price that kind of factors in that injury risk. But for me, I am drafting him when he's available. When it fits my build, I'm drafting him, but I'm also not punting quarterback and picking Dak around early because I know I can get him. It's more of a, okay, when my build is working that way, I'm over the moon to land Dak Prescott. I think he has the upside to be the quarterback 2, but I think the floor is much below quarterback 10. If an injury occurs or something like that, you know you're drafting a second quarterback if you take Dak Prescott, just because there's no guarantee he's playing all 17 games. He has the weapons to be a top 2 quarterback, but the health is the biggest question mark there. Moving on to the quarterback 3, I have Lamar Jackson there. So Lamar Jackson is being drafted as the quarterback 2. I have him as the quarterback 3. I think he has top 2 upside. I have him very close to Dak Prescott, less than a half a point. Less than a tenth of a point separating those two players for me on a per game basis. So to me, I'm looking at it as Dak has more of the passing upside, Lamar has more of the rushing upside. I just don't know how much throwing of the football Lamar Jackson's going to do. I have him for 435 passing attempts, which is a fine number, but if he gets above that, he has this. I think he can go beat the quarterback two. He's getting drafted as a quarterback two, and he goes about a full round to a round and a half later than Josh Allen does. So I'm not anti taking Lamar Jackson either, but typically if I'm not going Josh Allen, unless I have Zay Flowers, really I'm not drafting a lot of Lamar Jackson. I think he could be a top two quarterback. I have him at QB3, which is perfectly fine, but I don't see the path to him being quarterback one, and that's kind of what you want if you're drafting the second quarterback off the board. I think again he's kind of being drafted at his ceiling, and I'm not as excited about it as I am about Josh Allen because I think there is a gap there in terms of fantasy points per game. Moving on to my quarterback four, this is the quarterback four. It's Joe Burrow. There's kind of a bunch of quarterbacks here where you'll kind of see a group of guys bunch up together and be drafted in the same area. Joe Burrow is my favorite to draft in that range. I am drafting Joe Burrow as the quarterback four. I don't mind in the slightest. I once again like Dak. It's the injury risk is biggest kind of limiting factor with Burrow, but I think he's going to throw the football a ton. He's going to have a lot of touchdowns. I have him leading the NFL in touchdowns this year, passing touchdowns. So I like Joe Burrow as a fantasy option. He's one of my most drafted quarterbacks right now because he goes kind of in a chunk of quarterbacks. So a lot of people are getting their quarterbacks there. You can stack him with Jamar Chase or with T. Higgins. There's a lot of good builds you can make with Joe Burrow. He's one of my favorite quarterbacks to draft because I think if he stays healthy, once again, a top two quarterback upside and it's the injury risk that you're worried about, you draft the second quarterback and you forget about it. So, really, so far, Burrow and Dak are my two favorite drafting quarterbacks, really, that I'm going to talk about in the top 12 entirely. It's going to be those two guys, my favorite guys to draft, which is weird. Typically, I am in on the rushing upside, but we've seen so much injuries out of guys running recently that I think it is a little bit safer to take the pocket passer and pick up the passing yards and touchdowns week after week. Moving on to number five, this guy is projected to go ninth, so he's a ninth quarterback off the board right now by ADP. I have him at five. That's going to be Justin Herbert. I've talked about it before. I believe last year on the channel, I was talking about Justin Herbert as a sleeper MVP candidate. He's in a better situation now with Mike McDaniel coming in as the offensive coordinator. This should be a strong offense, and I think Herbert takes advantage of that. I have some rushing upside for him as well, 400 yards on the ground and 4 touchdowns. So I see a good season for Justin Herbert. I like him a lot this year. He's being drafted as a QB9, going right around Dak. I'm more than happy to walk out of the draft with either of those guys. I don't think there's as much injury risk just historically with Justin Herbert. So I don't mind if you want him over Dak. Those are two guys, like I said, I'm very happy to leave a draft with. Walking out of there with one of Dak or Justin Herbert makes me feel pretty strongly about my team. There's not as strong a stack with Herbert. If you want to go Lad McConkey, you can, but it's more of just, okay, I think this guy's going to spread the football around, even without the same weapons as some of the other guys I've talked about already. He's a good football player, a good thrower of the football, and going to have a very strong fantasy season. A guy I'm just slightly lower than ADP on is going to be Jayden Daniels. He's going as quarterback five. I have him as quarterback six. It's not hating on him. I just got burned pretty bad by him last year. I expected a huge season out of Jayden Daniels. The Commanders were my Super Bowl sleeper team, and that he really let me down last year. So has me a little bit lower on him this year, but I am still right around ADP. He's going in that Joe Burrow range though, and I'm taking Burrow over him unless I draft Terry McLaurin. Once again, a lot of these early quarterbacks, it's about the stack. It's okay. Did I grab Zay Flowers? I'm taking Lamar. Did I grab Josh Allen goes before his receivers do, but did I grab Terry McLaurin or T Higgins or whoever with these guys, Lad McConkey, let me grab the quarterback to stack with him. That's kind of leading to a lot of my exposure right now. So I'm very much so enjoyer of Jayden Daniels' game. I think if he can stay on the field, he's in for a good season. Like I said, I have him just slightly below where he's going, which does not mean you should avoid him in the slightest. If the value's there, if he slides a couple picks, I am not opposed to taking Jayden Daniels this year. I think he is in for a strong fantasy season and a bit of a bounce back this season. Next up, I have the quarterback 12 off the board as my quarterback 7. That's Patrick Mahomes. I talked about it at depth in the AFC West video, so I'm not going to get into it too much here. But Mahomes has had a very good year, or a string of good years, but then slowed down a bit recently. And it seems like the name value is a bit worn off, which I greatly appreciate. It seems like the best year to draft Chiefs because everybody's kind of forgetting that these guys are still talented, not just names. And so it is the year, like I talked about with Travis Kelce. It's the same thing with Patrick Mahomes. I have him for a good season this year, and I think the people are kind of sleeping on him because of a few lackluster performances, which is completely fair. And if you avoid him for that reason, I can't fault you. But to me, I look at it as, okay, you have Patrick Mahomes. He's a good player. He's in a good offense. Rashee Rice is back and healthy. Travis Kelce's back into the year, and they have a better running game. I don't see really a reason to be out on Mahomes this year. And I don't know. I think the QB12 price tag will climb a little bit. I don't think he closes as the QB12, but for right now, I'm taking advantage of that ADP dip. Now we have the quarterback 7. I have my quarterback 8. It's going to be Jackson Dart. I talked about it in the NFC East episode a little bit about my concerns with Dart, but all in all, I do enjoy his game. I am a Giants fan. I'm not drafting too much Dart because of the throwing his body around. I talked about how I think he'll slide more and get out of bounds more, but it is still, he's a reckless player at times, and it does worry me a little bit for fantasy. I think that's why my projection is a little bit lower than most people's is on Dart, is because I am worried about him potentially missing time, and I'm projecting him a little bit closer to his floor than his ceiling. But with that price tag, once again, it's just the opportunity cost, right? If I can get Mahomes 2 or 3 rounds later, I'd prefer that over Jackson Dart. If I can get Dak Prescott or Justin Herbert behind him too, those are guys I prefer. So that's kind of the reason I'm not drafting as much Dart. I don't see the path to a top 3, top 4 quarterback, and there's guys behind him that I see having that path. So that's kind of been my thought process with avoiding Dart this year. Moving on, I'm much higher than consensus on Bo Nix. I really like the addition of Jalen Waddle. I think this helps him quite a bit getting the ball out of his hands. Excuse me. I have him for 360 rushing yards as well and 4 touchdowns. So I think he takes a step forward in the passing game and still provides a little bit with his legs. At the QB9, I have him 6 spots ahead of where he's going. If I've punted quarterback, I do not mind going Bo Nix in the slightest. I have very few stacks. I'm not drafting too much of Courtland Sutton or Jalen Waddle just out of nerves of which one's going to be the guy. But Bo Nix, I think, is a big winner of the Jalen Waddle signing, and I think this offense does take another small step forward, and Bo Nix is at the helm of that. Moving on to the quarterback 10, I have Brock Purdy. He's going as the QB 13, another guy who they bring in another receiver in Mike Evans, and I think he just gets another step forward. I mean, he's a good quarterback. I don't have the same. I mean, he has underrated legs and for 240 yards, but I think he can eclipse 4,300 yards. I think he can get the ball out of his hands quickly and let his playmakers do things in space. And with that, I think he can outperform his ADP. Once again, a guy I'm not drafting too much, even though I am higher than consensus on him. I like Bo Nix more. I like Patrick Mahomes more. And I'm more likely to take Herbert or Prescott ahead of him. So I don't have too much Brock Purdy, but I do project him to be a top 12 quarterback this year. I think he has that kind of upside in his offense and has the ability to get there. It seems like upside is kind of the theme of my quarterbacks this year. If you'll notice, I haven't talked about the QB3 off the board yet. That's actually going to be Drake May. Drake May is the quarterback 3 off the board right now. People are very excited about the addition of A.J. Brown. They went to the Super Bowl last year. It feels like it's just everything's coming together for Drake May to have a huge season. I'm a little bit more out on him than most people are. I have him all the way down at QB 11. I've only drafted him if I've gone A.J. Brown for the stack. I prefer Burrow. I prefer Daniels in that range. It's hard for me to get excited about Drake May, even with the addition of A.J. Brown, because I don't know what this offense is going to look like with Brown. Is Brown going to be enough to give him a huge step up, the fantasy boost that you want to see out of Drake May? Did the Patriots come back down to earth off the Super Bowl? I just think there's too many questions that we don't have answers to right now, and May could climb as we get closer to the season, as camp rolls along, as we get reports. But for right now, I just think there's too many questions that we don't have answered to have any confidence in Drake May going into the fantasy season. And it's the same thing with my 12th quarterback who's being drafted as the quarterback 6, Jalen Hurts. I'm a little bit more out on Jalen Hurts. I'm worried about the rushing touchdown upside. I think Barkley continues to take more and more of those as the tush push gets phased out a little bit. And in the passing game, A.J. Brown's gone. Yes, they drafted Mekhi Lemon, who I do like, but A.J. Brown's gone. You expect him to lean on the ground a little bit more this year. And I just don't know how much of that's going to come from Hurts. And that's my fear, is that the running game kind of leaves Hurts behind a little bit this year, this upcoming season, and that we don't see it nearly as much, which means just not necessarily great things for this offense and for Hurts in general. I think the Eagles might be taking a step back offensively, and Hurts could take the brunt of that. So once again, if I have Devonta Smith, I'll draft Jalen Hurts, or I might try and stack him and Mekhi Lemon, but I'm not targeting Hurts in drafts because I do think he's going well over where he should be. Similarly with Drake May. I do want to talk about 2 more quarterbacks who are both being drafted in the top 12 right now. So that's kind of how I want to close out these episodes, with a couple guys who are being drafted ahead of guys I have, or our top 12 picks, and kind of where I have them and why. So pick 8 right now is Caleb Williams. He's the 8th quarterback off the board. I have him all the way down at 17. I'm not going to talk too much about it. The NFC North video had my full thoughts on Caleb Williams. But just for me, I don't know. I just don't feel like he has the 4,000-yard passing upside. I think he has some solid weapons, but I have to see him do it first. I don't believe that he can. Straight up. Let's just be honest here. I don't know that I think he's going to get there, and I need to see it before I believe it. If I'm a year late on Caleb Williams, I'm a year late I'd rather not be a year early, is kind of where I'm landing here. I don't think he's a league winner, even if he throws for 4,000 yards. And so I'd rather be a year late on him than a year early. And at number 11, it's Trevor Lawrence. I'm for 4,000 yards. It's a good offense, but they seem to want to run the ball a lot, and he doesn't provide too much with his legs. I have him for 212 yards rushing. It's all tight together up here, so I have him for, you know, just under 16 points a game, just behind Jared Goff. But once again, I can get other guys in that range who I much prefer. I'm not going to take a quarterback that I have a lot of questions about. With is this going to be the second year under Liam Cohen is productive as the first year, things like that. These are two guys, him and Caleb Williams, both who I'm okay with being out on and being wrong because I don't think they have the upside to hurt me if I'm wrong. If they outperform ADP by a slot or two, I think I'm still okay because of other guys I have that I think are also going to overperform. So because of that, I feel safe kind of passing on a lot of Trevor Lawrence and Caleb Williams this year. Now then, we have just 3 episodes remaining before I take a hiatus here. So we're going to have the running back episode tomorrow. And then next week, we will come at you with wide receivers and tight ends. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I will see you next time.